All right, and we're back for another episode of the Sports Department Podcast with Justin Valentovic, Stephen Bologna, Stephen Clark, Joe Paolantonio, and Jesse Norman. We're running 5 wide here. First time on the podcast, mainly because it's the Super Bowl, so why not go all out, get everyone on a little bit, and in a surprising fashion, the Chiefs absolutely got shut down by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tom Brady getting his seventh Super Bowl ring and his 5th Super Bowl MVP, just keeps on playing, and he hasn't skipped a beat. It seems like the Bucs, they did it. They got to their own home stadium and won the Super Bowl. So we're going to get into that. But first, guys, what's going on?
I'm doing very well. Very, very well. We saw a phenomenal Super Bowl last night. One for the ages that will be talked about for the next 100 years. This will be one of the games that they'll be looking at when they say the GOAT versus the baby GOAT is what they called it. And did it live up to the hype? Maybe for some people it did, for some people it didn't. But I enjoyed the Super Bowl from start to finish, halftime involved. I'm doing very well, Justin.
Halftime show was good. And if anybody says it wasn't, you're dumb. It was cool.
I expected more. I
thought he was going to bring out a special person. I thought maybe Drake was going to come through, somebody like that.
Yeah, I agree.
But one thing I will say, it was reported that The Weeknd spent $7 million of his own money.
What?
How was that over budget?
Granted,
it looked cool, but that didn't look like it should have been $7 million over budget.
I agree.
Because they let Lady Gaga jump out of the sky. They didn't have the budget for The Weeknd to build some flashing lights inside of this. I don't even know what that was.
Maybe he paid for the hologram Vince Lombardi. But
maybe
I hated that so much.
That was so bad.
Funny. I thought it was funny.
I thought it was funny too.
It was like a joke. I thought it was as a meme.
It was like a failed Disney attraction.
It's just The Weeknd, Coldplay, Maroon 5, just so generic sounding.
Chili Peppers.
The Chili Peppers are a little. They at least have some sort of style. I just felt like it was
Blink-182.
They never
bland.
Ew.
Do you think the Beatles would have played the Super Bowl
by himself? He carried the team.
Do you think the Beatles would have played the Super Bowl?
Probably.
Okay.
I don't know. They wouldn't have gotten paid. It would have only been. Is this the days of streaming that they'd play? Or
McCartney played. So you would.
That's true.
Yeah, but that's only because they really begged him to after the whole Janet Jackson thing.
Yeah,
we gotta go. We gotta go with the safest option possible. Who can we get? And they were like, Paul McCartney.
Well, let's just get right into the game. First, initial thoughts: 31-9 final score. Before we take a deep dive into it, what'd you guys think?
Wow. You look at that score, 31-9. You would have thought it would have been the Chiefs with 31 and the Buccaneers with 9. Todd Bowles and his defense came to play, literally rushing Patrick Mahomes every play. Jesse, you brought up the stat in our group chat about how he basically had to run the entire game. I believe
I have a nice stat for you.
It was
Patrick Mahomes ran behind the line of scrimmage 497 yards
and
trying to get away from the pass rush.
The craziest part about all that is only on 10% of their plays about or so, they blitzed them. They didn't even blitz him to begin with. It's just the front seven that we praised so much in the previous podcast.
I think we also have to make a note because I don't feel like enough people talked about this. The Chiefs were missing their 2 Pro Bowl caliber tackles.
And
for whatever reason, people aren't mentioning that. Not to take anything away from the front seven of the Buccaneers, but this is almost exactly what we've seen happen to the Packers, where the Packers had this great offensive line for almost the entirety of the year, and then all of a sudden they lose their 2 starting tackles. Same thing happens with the Chiefs. It was more so than anything what jumped off the page to me was just the absolute difference in the trenches and how, everybody says defense wins championships or this or that wins championships. It's really the trenches. It's what wins the championships.
It seemed
it was the total opposite. The Bucs wouldn't let anybody through. And that has a defensive line that has Chris Jones up there. And they could barely get any pressure.
Yeah,
Chris Jones, Frank Clark, all of them,
The O-line for the Chiefs, at least, kind of was very reminiscent of Clark. You would feel the pain of Luck having no offensive line, where the second he called hike, he was running for his life. And that's really what was the deciding factor, because Jason Pierre-Paul and Ndamukong Suh, Vita Vea, Shaq Barrett, they were getting there in time, which means the secondary didn't have to cover downfield that much. And granted, because every single Chief receiver seemed to be dropping balls and letting them hit them in the face, the big plays just weren't there for Kansas City, and that's because of the D-line was just so disruptive.
And they went up against
I think
an even better D-line last Super Bowl, and they played a lot better. So I think the tackles.
I think it goes back to Mitchell Schwartz and Eric Fisher.
100%. Because you're switching your right guard to right tackle, a replacement right guard, replacement left tackle. It's just it's a mess, and that's honestly what I feel was as soon as he went down, Fisher, that's almost like when they lost the Super Bowl.
Well, I feel like. Considering they literally started the guy who handed Von Miller his Super Bowl MVP and Mike Remmers, what would you expect would happen there?
Yeah.
Joe, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it was crazy. Oh, sorry, Joe, go ahead.
No, I think that Mahomes is going to learn a lot of this. He has been always in the best position to win, seemingly his entire career. He's had a good line in front of him. His receivers have always made the plays. This is what it looks like when a guy's on an island out there. Mahomes looked spectacular. Mahomes made some of the best incompletions you'll ever see. But when it comes down to it, no one can do it alone. This is what this tells me. When you watch the NFL, nobody has the ability to do it alone, not even the great Patrick Mahomes. However, some of those throws fall in, they have no chance. But you know how impressive it would be if he completed some of those passes, how some of those that hit the guy in the face mask, fall in, and they put up 21 points with Mahomes running for his life the entire time. It was gutsy. He was clearly hurt the entire time. Mahomes has not been 100%. We still don't really know what happened with that concussion. There's not a time to make excuses, but he did the best that he could in that situation.
And going back to the receivers, the big plays, they were there for them to take shots. And, after the first one hit Tyreek Hill, by the end zone, they're going to get one of those eventually. They just never got the big play in the home run ball, which we've seen them do time in and time in again.
It was the 2015
I think
Super Bowl 50, Cam versus the Broncos. It had the same energy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, except Cam played worse in that game than Mahomes did. And trust me, I was a huge Cam fan that year. But no, I think another takeaway from this, and I've felt this way the whole year through, all the different things that Tyreek Hill has said. Tyreek Hill is not that elite level receiver that people think he is. He's very fast. He's very, very fast. He's not a great route runner. He's probably a top 6 or 7, but he's not Devontae Adams. He's not DeAndre.
Yeah,
Hopkins.
His game
He's not even Travis Kelce, and Kelce had a bad game.
Yeah, his game is getting the ball to him in space and hoping he makes a few people miss. But the problem is you have to get the ball to him first. And other than his just speed downfield, he doesn't create a lot of separation in his route tree.
Yeah, once he's double covered or once he goes deep into the safety, not only one corner on him, he's just another, I hate to say it, he's just another average receiver. But once he gets the separation, once we know how fast he is, like Jesse just said, but he's still good, but he's not, the hype needs to be dialed down.
He's not that upper echelon.
I agree.
Yeah, he's not that upper echelon.
He's still
guy.
very good.
He's even below Mike Thomas. Yeah, no, very. I would say he's a top 10 receiver, but he's not in that top 4. He's not in that top absolute, conversation.
He maybe just missed the top 5
here, but he gets exposed easily at times. In a way that I don't think those guys in the upper echelon, Julio Jones in his prime, even if Hopkins or Adams have a bad game, there's no debate. I think this also, the Chiefs not being able to run a lot of play action passes goes back to the fact that having a tight end that's really just an extra receiver out there is fun a lot of the time, but it also can bite you in the tuchus here and there. You're comparing them a little bit. I mean, we're talking about comparing Tyreek Hill to other multi-dimensional receivers. I think that Travis Kelce is great. tremendous weapon in the offense. But I'm looking at him. I'd like to see him be a little bit more in the trenches and do a little bit more what George Kittle can do for San Francisco.
What Gronk does.
What Gronk has done.
I think the problem with that is also, though, he can do that. One, they don't ask him to do that. And two, while the run game was working for Kansas City when they went to it, they kind of couldn't go to it after the second quarter, really. Like, they tried in the third, but it just burned their clock. Like, they couldn't run the ball because they were just playing from so far behind after that first half got out of hand.
Yeah, and especially when, not blaming the game entirely on Tommy Townsend, the punter, but when he, there's a penalty, he gets called back, he has a good punt, but then he has an even worse punt inside the 50. It's like, you're not doing much to help your team there. And then when the Bucs they did what the Chiefs always did, was the quick strikes. And Tom Brady, we always said, he just likes to check it down. He could air it out with this offense.
Yeah, someone I think that deserves a lot of credit for the Super Bowl win is GM Jason Light. He had a plan called Operation Brady. I believe it was started 3 years ago. He gets Brady into town. You look at the guys he's drafted. I mean, Wirfs and Winfield, Jesse, we talked about that a little while ago. Devin White, Sean Murphy-Bunting, Jamal Dean, Vita Vea, Carlton Davis, O.J. Howard, Chris Godwin. I mean, this is a guy who built this team, brought in Brady's weapons with Antonio Brown, with Rob Gronkowski, with Leonard Fournette.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a front office that had a plan. They stuck to their plan. They got the ultimate piece of their plan with Brady, and it worked out to perfection. And they got the ring that they've been fighting for since 2002, I believe.
Yeah, you said it best, Steve. They've been building for this team, and they were just missing that one piece, and that one piece was Tom. Like, look at I know we said this on like the last or two podcasts ago or whatever when we talked about football, that they were 7-9 last year, and then the year before that they weren't too good, and then they just all of a sudden they get Tom and they get a bunch of all these other guys, and look where they are right here, right now, world champions.
And you look at who scored in this game: Antonio Brown, Leonard Fournette, and Rob Gronkowski, all guys that Tom wanted and Tom brought in, and they brought in.
Honestly, all guys they haven't been using all postseason as well. It's kind of like their corners, and everybody was trained to cover Godwin and trained to cover Mike Evans, and all of a sudden they go to the open guy, and whoever's open to get the ball, and it happened to be Gronk on that screen play there, and happened to be Gronk on another play, and he's just spreading the wealth, and that's the way it's done. That's the way you win championships.
So after the NFC Championship game, Bruce Arians, was basically saying it only took one man. The one man was Tom Brady, and the one man got them and won them the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
It's his seventh. This cements his legacy, best football player of all time, hands down, right? But
best quarterback, yes.
Yes.
Best quarterback, yeah.
There's some topics going around, and some people saying that he's the greatest athlete of all time. I know Jesse is very vocal about this. So
you can't make a football player the greatest athlete of all time simply to the fact that it is the most team sport out of any of the sports. One man cannot take over a game for like players could have really good games and take over for a single game, but even then they can't take over for entire stretches and things like in a team sport like basketball where a guy can fully take over, or in soccer a guy can take over. But then you look at the individual sports. You can't say Brady is a better athlete than, Tiger Woods at his prime and what he was doing in golf. And then Simone Biles, I think, is in a league of her own. Serena Williams, Michael Phelps, I think individually, those guys have so much more claim than Brady does to greatest athlete of all time.
Yeah, you can't do greatest athlete. It's even hard to judge like the greatest athlete between all the sports. You name so many great names right there: Michael Phelps, Tiger Woods, Simone Biles. Like, it's even hard to compare those guys too. And Brady's not even close to greatest athlete, not even close. But if
I think greatest competitor is fair.
Competitor, sure. Greatest quarterback, sure. Mm-hmm. Not like Justin, I don't know, even said greatest football player. That's even a little bit of a stretch too. But I guess he could be in the conversation for greatest football player. I know there's talented wide receivers with Jerry Rice and a bunch of other defensive guys, Ray Lewis, just to name two of the greatest of their positions. But Athlete, no, I wouldn't put him in that conversation.
Joe, what do you think?
Well, absolutely, Jesse is correct that it's even in a sport where it's either single competition or even the basketball, football, hockey, soccer, in a sport where you play both offense and defense, has a lot to do with it. Football, you're specialized, you're in one position, and it's very clear that a lot of Tom Brady's greatness, a lot of the praise that Tom Brady gets is about when his team wins. Personal talent is a whole separate debate, and it really depends on what your definition of greatness is. He might have the best resume, but I think that if you were to watch every single football player ever, you can come up with a lot of names who have more talent than him, not just at the quarterback position, but at any other position. So to say that he's the greatest athlete, I don't know. The greatest competitor, what Tiger Woods has done recently, absolutely insane, coming off of the back surgery and everything to come all the way back and win that Masters in 2019 was probably the biggest display of competitiveness I have ever seen in my entire life. Like Tom Brady, you're talking about a guy who has had the opposing team the last two Super Bowls in the Rams and the Chiefs. Great offenses, high-powered offenses. You couldn't stop them. 3 points and 9 points. It's very easy to win Super Bowls when the other team scores 3 points and 9 points.
Yeah, I want to talk about Todd Bowles because he called a perfect game. Basically, contained, if you hold the Chiefs to literally 3 field goals, you'll win. Simple as that. And we really haven't seen the Chiefs especially get blanked in the touchdown column, I think, ever at this rate.
Well, and I think we need to make a disclaimer. That's not a knock on Mahomes because he threw 2 touchdowns. He threw 2 touchdowns that were just straight up dropped. And again,
he threw for almost 300 yards too.
Yeah. And he only had 3 after the first quarter. So he threw for like 267 in 3 quarters. But I think I seen another stat of the 56 dropbacks and how many he was pressured. 29 of them came in under 2.5 seconds. So he just didn't have time. Like there was no time. And the fact that he still was making these plays and making these throws, I think if anybody has any debate or tries to use this game against Patrick Mahomes in the best quarterback argument, they weren't watching because he was the only reason they were even still somewhat in it in the third quarter.
I saw a tweet somewhere. It's like, this is what would happen if, you took Mahomes and put him on like the Bengals, because he had absolute no help. Like his receivers just weren't catching anything. His O-line wasn't blocking anything. And the defense, they just outmatched their offense as a whole.
Which
I guess that's kind of fair, but I also think I haven't seen receivers like drop balls or like have like just terrible hand placement like that since probably the Eagles receiving core like last year.
Especially how
like
good
they
just are too.
Yeah, like Travis Kelce just like dropped a couple. He dropped a huge one in like the first or second quarter that would have gave them a huge first down. I'm pretty sure in Buccaneers territory, just straight up dropped it. Tyreek Hill dropped a touchdown. There were multiple ones that hit guys in the hands and in the face, and they just dropped. I think if you give him a receiving core that can catch, like, say with the Bengals, I still think that's probably a 10-6, 11-5 team, because even with a turf toe injury, he was still creating.
Yeah.
The whole year, the Chiefs, I've seen this in the games that they've won. Really, and this goes back to last year too. They come out of the gate a lot with no focus, no urgency, coasting. They coasted for at least 10 weeks. They coasted
at least
for whole quarters in the playoffs last year and this year, and their talent bailed them out. It couldn't this time. I hope this is a wake-up call, because this team
It's too good.
Had urgency, and if Andy Reid made what usually graded adjustments, nothing was.
Well, that's the thing. This was kind of like classic Eagles Andy Reid when they lost, 3 straight NFC Championship games, where poor clock management and poor decision making and poor adjusting at halftime to what was going on.
But what can you adjust?
No, I agree.
Like, what can you do?
You can't have them catch better. Like, that's just, it just wasn't working out.
Well, even unless the only thing that, I could maybe think of is put a backup tight end out there and, help block, but they were already keeping running backs in and it wasn't helping.
Steve, what do you think?
I don't really know what they could have done.
I think I want to go back to Joe's point. I think it's unfair to kind of take away all the credit from Brady just because his defense played really well. If we're going with that argument, you take away Peyton's Super Bowl 50 win. You take away the Steelers win against the Seahawks when they only let up 10 points. Yes, the defense played amazing. We know this. We know this. Yes, you could say whatever you want about the referees, but Brady had 4 incompletions going into that fourth quarter. He only ended with 9 incompletions, 3 touchdowns. His passes were precise. They were clean. Most of them were accurate. But I don't think you can take away. I think this win, a lot of it has to do with Brady. Should he have won MVP? That's kind of here or there.
I think this is definitively his weakest
MVP.
I think this has been his weakest MVP.
You easily could have given it to Devin White, Gronkowski, Shaq Barrett.
I thought it was going to be Gronk,
even though he only had 1 tackle.
Yeah, but he did. I know he got them those 3 touchdowns in the first half too, and basically just had to coast the whole second half just because of how well he performed and how all of his throws were on point, and his passer rating I saw too was the highest by a quarterback I think I saw since 2006 that won a Super Bowl. And I know, Joe, you were crapping on his passer ratings from other Super Bowls in the past and all that, so he must have listened to this podcast on Apple, on YouTube, Spotify, and all that stuff, and or followed our social medias at Sports Depth Pod, and he probably took a little listen to that and said, "Hey, I'm gonna make all my throws on point," and he did that, and boom.
So, Joe, are you gonna give any credit to Brady for this win, this season, or anything like that?
Yeah, Tom Brady played well in the Super Bowl. Tom Brady had a nice year, not a Pro Bowl year, but he had a nice year. But it's just this is what I find disrespectful. When I understand the media, I understand fans on Twitter, but the coach comes out and says that it is one man and one man only are the reason why the Buccaneers won, and that Tom Brady, if I was on the Patriots, won those rings on the Bucs this year, it's like people are acting like this is a one-man show.
I think
I think he meant culture. It's like Brady changed the culture.
Exactly. They were 7-9 without him last year, and they're Super Bowl champions with rings on their fingers this year.
You see people saying that, like, you folks will say that this Buccaneers team was 7-9 last year.
They were.
Or ignore the fact, and that Tom Brady came, and now they're this great team. The defense is different. The defense,
a couple of rookies.
They filled in the holes where they needed it.
Exactly.
He brought in his friends. They filled in the holes. This is a complete roster.
Draft.
This is a complete great roster. This isn't Tom Brady. Like,
yeah, but two of the biggest rookies had the biggest impact. Antoine Winfield Jr.
Yes.
Wirfs.
Yes, they drafted. Not that they acquired, not that Tom called up his buddy. His buddy didn't do anything until the Super Bowl, if we're being honest, all season.
Gronk said he was a blocking tight end.
Quiet. They were quiet all season. AB wasn't even on the roster until what? And they were in the teens in the weeks or something like that. He didn't get a snap. And Gronk was quiet all season. So it's not even that. Like, yes, they performed well in the Super Bowl. Fantastic for them. But without Tom Brady, this team is not going to the Super Bowl. Plain and simple.
Saying this was a great team. Tom Brady played well.
It was.
So
I want the entire roster to get its fair because they all played fantastic.
So they're all getting rings.
They got a lot of credit, Joe. Not just Brady.
Let's talk about that roster because both teams kind of have some question marks going into the offseason. Obviously, the Chiefs need to address the O-line depth and depth as a whole because they are very top-heavy talent-wise. and the Bucs seem to have everyone being a free agent. So who needs to have a better offseason to get back at this point? Because JPP, I think, Sue, Brown,
Godwin.
Fournette,
Oh,
Gronk,
it's the
Godwin.
Bucs.
The Bucs.
It's the Bucs. They have everything. They have everything coming off the books. Like the Chiefs aren't losing much, and honestly, what they're losing, they can draft. Like they're not losing any of their big guys. The Bucs have a lot of people coming off, and a name that we barely mentioned so far that's coming off the books, and I think is gone, is Fournette. Fournette is going to get a contract. He's going to get a contract that somebody is going to give him. They're immediately going to regret, but he's going to get a contract. And I don't think there's any way Tampa makes room for him. And we've seen them run through Leonard Fournette majority of that Super Bowl after they scored those touchdowns.
Yeah, that's one
Ronald
thing.
Jones was nowhere to be seen.
Yeah, that's one thing he showed, that he can be the workhorse back, and that the Jags era of his career was just kind of more hampered by injuries rather than ability.
Yeah, and we've seen when he was healthy. I mean, he did carry them to an AFC championship.
My thing is that I think Ronald Jones could do the exact same thing. I really do. I think they're very similar.
He can't stay healthy.
That's the only problem. That's the only problem. But I feel like
they got Shady McCoy still.
Oh, stop. He didn't.
Hey,
didn't
back to back for Shady.
I'm pretty sure he was a healthy scratch.
He didn't play in either Super Bowl and has 2 rings.
And he has 2 rings. I mean, that's a finesser.
He deserved it. He deserved
it. That's a finesser.
The Buccaneers are going to have an easy division next year. They're likely going to win it. The Saints, the Falcons, and the Panthers really are not in that good a shape. It's going to be,
unless the Panthers trade for Deshaun Watson. I mean, that's the only difference maker.
That could be fun.
The big name
that could be fun.
The big name the Bucs have to focus on, though, they have to lock up Shaq Barrett, because he's proven he's an elite pass rusher. And if that comes at maybe letting Godwin walk, you might have to.
I would.
I think Godwin's got to go. I don't think you can pay Godwin. I think Brady's developed Scotty Miller and Tyler Johnson enough that they can take his spot, and I think
agree.
that's fine.
And Bruce Arians said that Mike Evans is willing to take a pay cut to keep some of the guys around.
That's interesting. I want to see. The only thing I'm scared about throwing huge money at Shaq Barrett is he's always had JPP on the other side, and he's always had guys along that line. If those guys leave, I don't necessarily know if Shaq Barrett is still that same pass rusher. He could still probably be pretty good, but I don't know if he's that, 16, 17 sack a year guy when he's going to be facing double teams, when they can only, they can throw both guys at him instead of just one.
I think for me, Chris Godwin has to be number one. He's so young, and if he didn't have injuries this year, easily over 1,000 yards. Had 1,400 the year before that. And him with Mike Evans is just deadly. Shaq Barrett, though, I think he had 20 quarterback pressures in this game, second most in Super Bowl history to Nick Bosa, funny enough, last season. So I think they do have a lot of holes. The Chiefs should be fine next season, back and better than ever, and they are currently the favorites to win it all. So there's good reason for that.
So the question is now, will the Bucs repeat?
No. They're going to lose too much.
I'm a no as well.
I think they have a really, really good chance to win the NFC again, because the NFC has gotten predominantly weaker as the years have gone on. Everyone's getting older. People are leaving the NFC. We don't know the fate of Rodgers going on with Green Bay. Most likely staying, but we don't know the fate there. LA has a pretty good team, but we don't know what that's going to consist of over there. See, I think they can beat out Seattle. I think they can beat out Arizona over there. They're probably going to win their division. The NFC East, you never know with Dallas or one of those teams there. Washington has a great defense, but I don't know. I think they can win the NFC again. Going all the way back to back, I'm going to have to go no for now, though.
I think they'll lose the NFC Championship game.
All right. Okay. I think they make it back, but they don't win it all.
I agree with that. Exactly.
Yeah,
that's good. I like that.
Well, and with that wraps up our Super Bowl 55 recap. Once again, the Bucs beating the Chiefs 31-9. Brady getting his 7th Super Bowl ring. And Clark, where can everyone listen to the rest of our podcasts?
Like I said, Tom Brady was listening to us allegedly. No sources on that, but make sure you guys subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Follow our social medias on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Sports Depth Pod. That's Sports DEPT Pod. I know there's a mock draft coming out that Steve and Jesse did. That should be coming out pretty soon. I know nothing else that's coming out because we have nothing else planned. Maybe a basketball,
we're kind of
hockey, baseball, base spring training starting. That's exciting. Something there. NXT Takeover is this Sunday, so we'll be predicting that. That'll be getting released probably
Excited.
Sunday. Yeah, Steve's very excited for that. And Otis, his boy, not on the card, but yeah, that's how it is. So we'll be predicting that, reacting to that. Not much else planned. Football's done, so it's kind of a little break for us too in a way, because we three or two of our podcasts during the week would consist of football.
Yeah. So we gotta figure that out.
Yeah, we have a little gap, so there'll be more other sports, more stuff for that. So stay tuned to all that fun stuff, and we'll see you in the next episode.